As we move closer to the end of the ascending phase of Kali Yuga in the year 2025, it is crucial to understand the deeper implications of the times we are living in. The term ascending Kali Yuga can be quite deceptive. It gives the impression that we are entering a more enlightened or virtuous period of civilization, one marked by progress, wisdom, and harmony. However, this is a serious misunderstanding of the nature of this age and its unfolding dynamics. In reality, the so-called ascent of Kali Yuga refers primarily to superficial improvements in material life, rather than a true elevation of human consciousness or spiritual values. Yes, as we transition through this phase, we do observe certain material advancements, technological innovation, better infrastructure, increased lifespans, and stronger physical health among populations. These changes might suggest a civilization that is advancing. Yet, this material progress stands in stark contrast to the inner state of humanity, which continues to decline. Throughout the Kali Yuga, and even in its ascending phase, human consciousness suffers from a gradual but relentless degradation. Qualities such as wisdom, compassion, spiritual awareness, and moral clarity diminish generation by generation. Instead, we witness the rise of ignorance, greed, selfishness, disconnection, and emotional instability. These inner deficits are not counterbalanced by outer development, in fact, they are often exacerbated by it. The more humanity focuses on external progress, the more it tends to neglect the internal world, leading to a deeply fractured and disoriented society. By 2025, we find ourselves in a world where the imbalance between the material and the spiritual has reached critical proportions. This ever-widening gap between matter and spirit is not merely a poetic metaphor, it is a real and pressing condition that underlies much of the suffering and injustice we see across the globe. Economic disparity, ecological destruction, social fragmentation, mental health crises, and spiritual emptiness are all symptoms of this disconnection. Our world is becoming increasingly complex and chaotic, not because we lack resources or intelligence, but because we have lost touch with the higher principles that should guide our lives. We prioritize the accumulation of wealth, status, and comfort while neglecting the nourishment of our inner life, our connection to each other, to nature, and to the sacred dimension of existence. This is why the closing years of the Kali Yuga demand a radical reorientation of our values and priorities. It is no longer sufficient to rely on external solutions or continue the pursuit of material success as the highest goal. We must look inward. The urgent need of our time is to reduce our obsession with material acquisition and turn our attention to the cultivation of inner wisdom, emotional balance, and spiritual depth. Developing our mental and spiritual consciousness is not an abstract or esoteric pursuit, it is essential for restoring equilibrium to both our personal lives and the collective human experience. Only through this inner awakening can we begin to heal the fractures that define our age. We must embrace practices that elevate the soul, reawaken the heart, and reconnect us with timeless truths that have guided humanity through darker epochs in the past. The ascending Kali Yuga, therefore, is not a time of celebration for material gain, but a call to awaken from spiritual slumber. It is a narrow passage through which we must pass, cautiously, consciously, and courageously, if we are to reach a new dawn of clarity and balance. The future depends not on what we build externally, but on what we remember internally, that we are not merely consumers in a physical world, but conscious beings entrusted with the sacred task of being among the many prophecies and spiritual revelations of the 20th century. One of the most significant is the statement made by Alice Bailey, esotericist, writer, and student of the Tibetan master Djwhal Khul, regarding the date of the Avatar's emergence and the beginning of a new phase in the evolution of human consciousness. Her words about the reappearance of the Avatar and the externalization of the hierarchy, meaning the hierarchy of divine beings, gods, and angels working for the evolution of human awareness, point to a pivotal moment, the period after the year 2025. According to Bailey, it is from this time onward that the gradual return of the spiritual hierarchy into the physical world will begin, along with the increasing presence of the Avatar, a messenger of divine will and love, who can guide humanity toward a new level of awakening. But what does this return mean? The hierarchy is not just a religious or mythological concept. In the tradition of esoteric philosophy, it is a living, multidimensional fellowship of ascended masters, archangels, and spiritual intelligences whose work is dedicated to awakening humanity, synthesizing science and spirituality, and laying the foundation for a civilization based on love, truth, justice, and inner light. For a long time, this hierarchy operated behind the veil, hidden due to the dense conditions of the Kali Yuga and the general spiritual unreadiness of humanity. However, with the closing of certain cosmic cycles and the dawning of new ones, beginning around 2025, their influence will become more visible, and their presence more palpable. Already in 1945, at the height of global upheaval, just after the threat of Hitler's armies had been neutralized, Bailey conveyed an urgent message through her writings. She stated that humanity must recognize three essential truths by the year 2025 if it is to avoid a future marked by new waves of destruction and potential self-annihilation. These three recognitions are: 1. Recognition of the Christ within oneself. This is not about religious dogma or passive belief. It refers to the awakening of the inner Christ, the principle of divine love, the heart's wisdom, the spirit of service and self-sacrifice for the common good. The Christ is not just a historical figure, but a spiritual archetype present within every human being. To recognize it means to shift from egocentric living to altruism, from fear to trust, from separation to unity. 2. Recognition of the existence of the spiritual hierarchy. Humanity must move out of its spiritual isolation and acknowledge that it is not alone in the universe. Higher intelligences exist, guides, teachers, cosmic architects, who have long worked behind the scenes to steer our evolution. To accept their presence is not to submit blindly, but to consciously cooperate with the greater plan. It is to realize that we are participants in a much larger cosmic story. 3. Recognition of the plan of evolution. The third recognition involves understanding that human history is not a series of random events. Evolution is a guided process, an unfolding blueprint within which each soul has a role to play. Understanding this brings purpose, inspires responsibility, and shifts our focus from destruction to co-creation, from chaos to harmony. According to Bailey, these recognitions were to be cultivated by 2025, marking a spiritual threshold for humanity. Why this specific date? From an esoteric perspective, 2025 corresponds to the completion of certain astrological and energetic cycles, especially in relation to planetary and cosmic alignments that influence the collective psyche of humanity. It represents a kind of spiritual crossroads, a moment when humanity must choose between regression into materialism and conflict, or ascension into conscious cooperation with the forces of light. The emergence of the Avatar, or the great teacher of the New Age, is not a singular event. It is a process. The Avatar is not merely a physical person, but a spiritual energy, an infusion of divine love and will into the mental and emotional fields of humanity. This influence begins to prepare receptive souls, reorient institutions, and inspire transformation from within. The Avatar comes not as a ruler or judge, but as a force of renewal, an impulse of higher truth capable of initiating planetary rebirth. So what can we do in this transitional time? Each person has a role to play. It is essential to move away from cynicism, passivity, and the narrow lens of materialism. We must cultivate spiritual sensitivity, seek deeper meaning, develop intuition, and live in service to truth and goodness, not for reward, but for the joy of alignment with something greater. In doing so, we help to create a collective vessel capable of receiving the new light that is approaching. The passage through 2025 is not merely an external event, it is an internal test of every soul. It is a time when the pulse of humanity is measured. Are we ready to step beyond fragmentation and towards spiritual unity? Are we willing to recognize the sacred within and around us? This is the hour of decision. The spiritual dawn depends not on miracles from above, but on the awakening from within. Bringing light into the age of darkness.